Welcome to the 10th Rule Books, big bad old school radio serial podcast. Brought to you by 10th Rule Books, bringing you the pulp fiction that skips the boring parts. This week we have part 1 of Fierro, as we bring you some 80s style crime fiction from Todd Moore. On this week's episode, there's trouble brewing in both Hollywood and Salinas. Enjoy.
Chapter 1. Gordon, Hollywood, sometime in the late 1980s. Gordon hated parking his car in the street in general, and this neighborhood felt even worse about it. Problem with the convertible is any junkie with a box cutter could get in and steal his imitation Blaupunkt stereo. Cheap knockoff or not, it was his stereo and he did not have the cash sitting around to replace it. The idea of driving around in his shiny new cherry red Pontiac Fiero without it was unacceptable. He checked his shoulder rig before getting out. Like his stereo, the gun was a knockoff. The original AMC Auto Mag went out of production sometime in the 70s. After watching Dirty Harry wield one, Gordon really wanted one of his own. But had to settle for an imitation some company called Oswald Arms made. Looked just like the one Clint used, and fired the same .45 caliber round. Plus, as far as he knew, no one else in Los Angeles was packing one. He opened the glove compartment and saw his Sig Sauer P220, just like the one Don Johnson's character used on Miami Vice. He considered taking it instead. Like the AMC, it fired a .45 caliber round, but held 10 bullets in the extended magazine instead of 7 like the AMC. 7, however, should be more than enough for the task ahead, and Dirty Harry was a hell of a lot cooler than Detective Crockett ever would be. He left the Sig in the glove compartment and made sure he locked the door. With the automag under his jacket, Gordon wished some scumbag would put his dirty paws on his Fiero, just so he could blow him away. Hoped they would wait until after he was finished with his business in the apartment, though. If he did not get his product back, and soon he would be out a major chunk of change. He was actually glad the Colombians had made him front the 20 grand. He was pissed at the time, since he had proven he could move their shit. But it was best not to owe those guys. The boys from Bogota seemed to jump on any excuse to take payment in blood. Gordon went to the trunk and checked the bag to make sure he had what he needed. 2 rolls of duct tape, some rope, a pair of handcuffs, combat knife just like the one from Rambo. A straight razor, 2 condoms, a pen, and a spiral notebook were inside just like they were supposed to be. Condoms were wishful thinking in case Chrissy and her new porn star boyfriend had broken it off. It was a long shot. Even if she were done with the porn star, going back to Gordon was unlikely. Still, she was the kind of girl who any chance, even a small one, was a chance worth being prepared for. She was also the kind of girl who no man with half a mind risked going bareback with. Losing Chrissy was a bummer. Though other than the sex, she had become completely intolerable. But he would have been over it. LA had more than its share of pretty women, and Gordon usually had the thing many of them liked the most, high-quality cocaine. Chrissy was such a fan of the coke, she took some with her when she moved out of Gordon's place. He paused before knocking on the door. Chrissy and the new guy were going at it hard. He'd like to think he used to make her moan like that, but knew deep inside he hadn't. He put some force into the knock, but Chrissy kept going, getting louder. He went back to his car and smoked a cigarette, gave him some time to finish. If they were still going at it, he was going to bust down the door this time, but Chrissy had stopped, so he knocked again. "Who is it?" a male voice said from inside. "Delivery." "Delivery of what?" "A package." The porn star opened the door a crack, and Gordon kicked it open the rest of the way. Chapter 2. Andy, Salinas. "I can get you a quarter for 30, 100 for a whole gram." "Nah, just sell me the weed," Derek said after thinking it over for a second. He had parked his van by the gas pumps at the station where Andy worked. It might make things less suspicious if he actually put a couple dollars in the tank, but Derek was not going to bother. "You sure? Blows the shit, man, and these are like friends' prices," Andy countered. He had lugged the entirety of his stash of blow to work and hoped someone like Derek would take some off his hands. He had hidden it in his car, a Datsun 310, waiting patiently behind the service station for Andy to get enough money together to replace the fuel pump. "You out of smoke or something?" Andy shook his head and leaned into the window of Derek's custom van. Mostly to get a look at Denise, who was way too fine to be hanging out with a loser like Derek. Must have been the van. Denise was hanging in the back on the waterbed Derek had put in there with her fat friend Lisa. Andy gave Lisa a smile and a head nod. Andy always thought once he graduated and got away from the snooty bitches he went to school with, he would find himself a girlfriend. It had not really worked out. The problem with a town this size is the same girls who didn't find him attractive are now the only women around, and their opinion had not changed. He was down to hitting on the Lisas of the world. Girls he was not really attracted to, but figured to be available. Apparently Lisa had not reached the same low point because she pretended not to see him. "You girls want to try some blow?" Andy asked. They looked at him, sneering because he dared to interrupt their conversation. "On the house." "You have some smoke or what?" Denise asked. "You sure?" "Maybe another time," Denise said. Despite having the body of a troll with a face a horse might be ashamed of, Lisa did not even deem him worthy of conversation. Andy decided to give up on the coke and said to Derek, "Quarter?" "Just a nickel. Denise wants to drink some Jack and Cokes. That whiskey ain't cheap." Andy nodded, asked, "You partying at your place?" Hoping to get an invitation. "Nah, I'll probably go to the beach. Maybe build a bonfire and shit." He did not offer any more details, and Andy figured he was not invited. Andy glanced back to the garage. The mechanic on duty had his head buried under the hood. No one else was working at the gas station on this cloudy Friday afternoon. He reached into his jacket and gave Derek the small bag. He knew when Derek paged him all they would be buying was a nickel bag. If they had asked for a quarter, he would have to go to his car to get it. "If you change your mind about the blow, you know how to find me," Andy said as he took the money. Considering Derek paid 2 of the $5 in quarters, it was unlikely he could pony up the necessary cash for any coke. Andy felt stupid to ask at him, but it was not like he had anyone better to try to sell to. Derek shrugged, fired up the van, and drove off. Andy made his way back to his spot behind the register, a whole $5 richer. This town was so lame, he still had to actually sell his nickel bags for $5. His chances of moving the coke at $25 a quarter gram seemed slim and none. It appeared such a great idea last week when Lance had given it to him. His pager buzzed on his belt. Andy always felt important when someone paged him. He was disappointed to see it was Lester, or Lance as he'd like to be called since getting into the adult film business. He was glad he was at work, since there was no way he could make a long-distance call and get away with it. Lance was probably wondering about all the money Andy was supposed to make moving the cocaine. Lance would be pissed when Andy told him he could not sell it. Turns out the bikers he knew who were selling this hillbilly version of cocaine they cooked up themselves out of cough medicine and household products had no interest in buying the real thing. It may have helped if Andy knew what he was doing. He had no idea what a kilo of cocaine sold for. It did not matter anyway. Before they got around to talking price, Eddie told him he sold shit to Andy, not the other way around. Andy asked if he knew anybody who would want it. This earned a slap to the side of the head hard enough his ears just recently stopped ringing. The hippies out on the coast he bought weed and mushrooms from were not into the whole chemical amphetamine scene, and the kids he normally sold weed to did not have enough money. To make matters worse, anyone remotely interested was buying the hillbilly shit the bikers were cooking up. He wished he had been more honest about how much a dealer he was when Lance came back to Salinas. Hearing about how Lance was banging hot chicks and getting paid for it sounded so much better than working part-time at a gas station selling high school losers weed. Andy felt the need to pad his story. Sitting behind the counter had become more annoying since Lester gave him the coke. The worst thing to happen to a dude working a boring dead-end job was to get a glimmer of hope. Only days ago, he was thinking he was headed for the big time. Picture him getting one of those suitcase phones like the drug dealers used on Miami Vice, or even a car phone, which would mean having a working car. He knew Lance did not get him enough blow to get a Ferrari like the dude on Miami Vice, but it might be enough to get a used Pontiac Fiero, which looked a lot like a Ferrari. Given the way things were going, he might as well have been dreaming of the Ferrari. Eddie's hardly roaring as he came up the street toward the service station broke him out of his self-pity. Thankfully, Eddie did not need any gas and cruised by without stopping. Chapter 3. Eddie, Hack, and Hack's old lady. Eddie liked how the house they rented on the edge of town looked out onto endless strawberry fields. Except when the migrants were out picking berries, he could sit on his front porch smoking cigarettes and drinking Budweisers, feeling like he had a place to himself out in the country. Hack's old lady was sitting on the threadbare couch watching cartoons. Even after 8 months of living with him, Eddie had yet to learn her name. Hack always referred to her as his old lady, and Eddie had never heard him call her anything but hey you when they were on good terms, and fucking bitch when they were not. 8 months ago she looked good, nice and curvy in all the right places and flat and tight in what could be the problem areas. But she had developed a taste for the crank Hank cooked up in the garage. She was starting to look like a malnourished old woman on her way to becoming a skeleton. At one time, Eddie was jealous. thinking about how Hack was banging this chick and all Eddie had was his hand and the occasional blowjob from some broke-ass junkie. But no more. Broke-ass junkies were starting to look like Playboy bunnies compared to Hack's old lady. Not like Hack could complain, he was starting to look the same way himself. Hack up yet? Eddie asked as he put a bag of cold medicine he bought so Hack could cook the next batch on the cooking down on the kitchen table. You pick me up some cigarettes, she asked. Eddie pulled a pack of Marlboro Reds out of the bag, opened it, and put one between his lips before telling her no. He went to the refrigerator, grabbed himself 2 beers, and headed to the front porch to look at the fields. By the time he finished his first beer and cigarette, Hack joined him on the porch. The old lady's pissed you did not bring her any smokes. Look like I'd give a fuck? Hack nodded. Fact was, at 6'6", 260 pounds, covered in jail-ass tattoos, denim, and leather, Eddie never looked like he gave a fuck. Hack went back inside and came out with his own beer and half a Swisher Sweet cigar he'd scrounged from the ice tray in the bathroom. I saw that punk Andy today, Eddie said after Hack sat down with one of the lawn chairs they kept on the porch. You mean the pudgy kid who tried to sell some coke? Yeah, the one who never wears any socks. He was working the gas station on Main. Odd thing for a big-time drug dealer to do. Makes me think he was full of shit. Yeah, funny thing though is, after you left, I couldn't help but think about it. Pretty sure I could turn that shit over fast up in San Francisco if I had it. But you don't, and I'm guessing neither does he. Never did. Think that punk was trying to swindle me? Hack thought about it for a second. No. He's a dumb shit, but he's not a fucking dumb shit. So he at least thinks he has some real shit. Yeah, it don't matter though. We don't have that kind of cash sitting around. Best not to mess with those crazy Colombians anyway. Fuck them. Who said anything about buying it? Again, Hack took a few seconds to process before he answered. You know where he lives? I know someone who does. Hack took a little bit to process again, but eventually said, "What are we sitting here for?"
You've been listening to the 10th Rule Books Big Bad Old School Radio Serial Podcast, brought to you by 10th Rule Books, bringing you the pulp fiction that skips the boring parts. Be sure to check out all our books on Amazon, including the new cook novel, Best Laid Plans of Idiots and Fuck-Ups. Like us on Twitter at 10th Rule Books, and follow us on Facebook. You can also check out the 10th Rule Books blog. We will be back next week with part 2 of Fierro,